So last year, Nintendo was trying to justify the price of Mario Kart World by claiming it was because of variable pricing. Basically, the idea of having different games at different prices based on things like demand or the amount of content or things in the game. But I feel like most people, myself included, consider that claim to be BS. Since Mario Kart World was the only game that was $80 and most other games were $70, it really only seemed like they wanted to price Mario Kart World at $80 because it was a game in high demand, and it seemed like they just wanted to jack up the price of games that were in high demand, like Mario Kart World, or instances during the Switch 1 era where they priced games a bit higher, like Tears of the Kingdom. Well, I guess that was the only instance, but still, it did seem like that was more so them wanting to just charge more for it than actual variable pricing. But it seems like now Nintendo actually is kind of committing to their claim, since we are seeing a bit more variation in the price of their games. Not anything crazy, it's only been like a couple games so far, but it seems like they're actually kind of doing something. Since Splatoon Raiders will be $50 digitally and $60 physically, which I think is definitely great news to hear. And I think that is actually a pretty good price for this game. Since it's a spin-off to Splatoon, it's definitely more experimental. I do think there will be a decent amount of content in this game. I'm thinking it will be like at least as big as a $60 Switch 1 game. It's kind of looking that way. It does look bigger than any other like regular Splatoon campaign, just with like all that we've seen, the wide open areas and things. It does seem like a pretty interesting concept, but I think pricing it at $60/50 digitally is definitely a smart thing to do with a game like this. I feel like most Splatoon players definitely would expect something a bit cheaper than the standard, because this doesn't include like a proper like online mode, because I mean it doesn't have to, it's literally a spin-off. It does have online co-op and also local co-op as well, which is nice, but this is like, Nintendo is definitely touting this as like a single player focused Splatoon spin-off. So I think like pricing it a bit cheaper than the $70 standard is definitely a good way to go here, and I definitely have a bit more hope for how Nintendo will price games going forward, though it is a bit weird that they still did price some games that really should have been a bit cheaper at $70, or at least $70 physically, like Mario Tennis Fever. Well, I did enjoy that game, and I definitely feel like it was one of the best Mario sports games in recent years. There really isn't any reason why a Mario Tennis game should be $70. There really is only so much you could do with tennis. And while it does have a lot of content, I don't think it has $70 worth of content. I feel like it really could have benefited from like a $50 to $60 price point. And then we also have Yoshi in the Mysterious Book, which, I mean, at the very least, will be $60 digitally, but it still will be $70 physically, meaning that $70 was the intended price. And while I'm still holding out hope for the game, I mean, Nintendo isn't really doing the game any favors with its marketing, because it does look like it's for young children. I am still looking forward to it, though, don't get me wrong. Like, I did like Yoshi's Crafted World, so I really think it's the marketing that's like kind of making this game look a bit slow and like not that interesting, but I think that game definitely should have been like $50, 50 or 60, I would say would have been fair. Though I feel like the reason why it's the full standard price is because of the popularity of Yoshi as a character, and the fact that like previous Yoshi games sold fairly well, like fairly consistently, to the point where they were comfortable with selling it at the standard price. But still though, Switch 2 standard prices for a 2D Yoshi game, regardless of its quality, is a bit much in 2026. So, despite Mario Tennis Fever and Yoshi in the Mysterious Book, it does seem like they are implementing this strategy in other areas. And the other example is Rhythm Heaven Groove. Funnily enough, the same month as Splatoon Raiders. So, I mean, maybe they're doing this, like, strategically, like, in the second half of the year, they're starting to roll this out. Though that might be a coincidence, since Splatoon Raiders and Rhythm Heaven Groove are both kind of like experimental slash niche games. I know Splatoon isn't niche, but like a Splatoon spin-off kind of is a little bit. But with Rhythm Heaven Groove, that will be $40, which is definitely a bit cheaper than the standard price for a Switch 1 game, and I feel like if this game was released a few years earlier, it probably would have been at the slightly cheaper price point of $50, which the WarioWare games were usually at, since Rhythm Heaven is very reminiscent of WarioWare in a lot of ways. I mean, its roots are heavily connected to WarioWare, since they both started off being developed by Nintendo R&D 1 slash SPD 1 back in the 2000s. And I have a feeling that Rhythm Heaven Groove will probably be developed by the modern WarioWare team, just by how things are kind of, like, shaping out. But the fact that it's $40 seems to indicate that they want to have a broad range of prices between the Switch 1 and the Switch 2. I know Nintendo kind of did this in the Switch 1 era, like I already mentioned, with WarioWare, it was $10 cheaper than the standard, and then some games were even $30, like Game Builder Garage and Big Brain Academy as well. I'm sure there were a few others, but it seems like they're kind of doing an even wider range now. I'm not sure if the $40 price point will carry over to like Switch 2 games, since it definitely does seem like Nintendo wants to charge a premium for Switch 2 games, regardless of how they are. But it is nice right now that at least we have like these Switch 1 games that, like, I mean, don't necessarily need to be on Switch 2, that kind of fill out that more budget price range. I did have concerns in the past that Nintendo was kind of like not really offering enough budget options, and I feel like that still is a problem to a degree with the fact that they had to increase the price of the Switch 1. But I feel like pricing some of these games cheaper, like Rhythm Heaven Groove, kind of does soften the blow a little bit and definitely does offer a bit more of like a budget option. And things like Splatoon Raiders is kind of like inching in that direction for like the Switch 2 side of things as well. Though I feel like Switch 2 in budget is kind of an oxymoron considering how expensive everything is. But with how expensive other consoles are, and the price increase of the PS5, and how expensive PC handhelds are, the Switch 2's price isn't that bad. Unless the Switch 2 does get a price increase. But that's besides the point. I just hope that Nintendo actually does commit to variable pricing and kind of has a wide range of prices across the board. And while it is nice that Nintendo is pricing these more niche games at lower prices, I hope they do more than just that. I hope they actually price games for the amount of content that they have, because something like Mario Kart World should not be $80. Like I feel like $70 should be like the max for some. Honestly, I don't think any game should be $80, just in my opinion, but like I think they should like actually price games based on the amount of content they have rather than the demand. I know from a business perspective, it makes sense to price the games like at like their demand, but like still, I feel like at a certain point, like when you see a game like Mario Tennis at $70, like regardless of its quality, it's still Mario Tennis for $70. That isn't exactly the most enticing thing for a consumer. Mario on the label or not, I know there's kind of a reputation of people buying something if it has like Mario or Pokemon on it, but like, I don't think that's necessarily the case. I mean, like, people can tell that it's like a spin-off of Mario, or like still like a somewhat small game for $70. So I do hope that Nintendo like commits to this model a bit more after Splatoon Raiders. I hope Splatoon Raiders is like the beginning of like Nintendo actually kind of having this model rather than just like a one-off thing, or just the fact that it's like either a smaller title or a niche title that they want to push. So I do have hope that Nintendo is going to improve with their pricing, but I still think it's also fair to be cautious at the same time. But anyways, let me know what you think down in the comments, and thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more, and make sure to check out my Discord server and Blue Sky if you want to. Stay perky!